Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Humanitarian Horizons, Christina and Erik Unveiled. And I am so excited to have one of my dear friends. We've been in the cannabinoid space now here since the program became legal. We met Erik Asher. Thank you so much for joining me today. How are you, my friend?
Oh, it's fantastic to be here. Appreciate you having me on. I'm doing all right. We're not going to get to see the eclipse cloud cover today, but
and we had our earthquake on Friday.
Yeah. Oh, I'll bet that scared some people half to death. See, I'm from California, so earthquakes are no big deal for me, but I heard that back east it scared a few folks.
Yep. I was on a Zoom with the UK and everything was shaking because, I lived on the West Coast. So for me, it was like, I've driven in earthquakes, not really bad ones, but I've driven in them.
Nothing, that's just on the front yard.
So it was just so funny to see everybody's terrorized. And I'm like, well, we're probably having an earthquake because what else could this be?
Yeah, it's not mine subsides this far along in the game.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I wanted to specifically talk to you about, since we are both in the Commonwealth and we are both medical cannabis patients, I thought it would be a great idea for us to talk a little bit about our program in Pennsylvania, because obviously we've seen some changes in our program. And I'm saying this, not you, but in my opinion, it hasn't been to our benefit as patients, even though it was promised when we started in this program way back in the day, that it would be more patient-centric and focused so that there were alternatives for patients, more so in the natural space, to be able to combat some of the therapeutic areas that they have issues with.
Oh, absolutely. I remember everybody being very excited in 2016 when we signed Act 16 into law. It took them 2 years to, get everything up and running, and we didn't get our first dispensaries until 2018. The timeline of our medical program has been very interesting, to say the least. 2018, we got our first dispensaries, and there was a lot of young, small companies that were coming up, grower processors and dispensaries that were patient-focused and quality-focused. Because this wasn't about profit back then. This was about access to medicine. Mm-hmm. And the companies that were involved, yes, there were some people that were doing less than stellar things in the cannabis space, even at the beginning. But because there were 40 different companies all competing and all trying to find their way in this new space, the quality of the medicine coming out at the time was excellent, better than most other states. Our testing requirements were extremely high level. So we were the envy of other medical programs at the very beginning, but that changed very quickly.
Also, when we kicked off the program, they had written in the right to do clinical research with the academic universities here in the Commonwealth. Yes. We're very blessed. I mean, we have Penn, we have TJ, Thomas Jefferson University, we have PCOM, we have all of these great universities here. And they had to sign up for the program, they had to be validated, but there was a short list, individual universities, Pitt was one of them, where they were supposed to be doing true clinical research. Now, we're not talking about preclinical to our listeners and viewers. That's how it usually starts. So that's the rats and the mice and the animal studies, right? We're talking about actual human interaction clinical studies. And that was one of the things that attracted me specifically in the Commonwealth, was the fact that, hey, listen, we're actually going to do some research, right? Our program has that. Not every state has that, throughout the United States, which was a big deal. So I'm sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to make sure we carve that out for people so that they understand, where did we start with all this, right? And that's what
like I say, we had a very enviable medical program from the standpoint of the quality of the products that were being offered. We're one of the few states that has a medical program that does not allow combustion of cannabis. Now, personally, I haven't been a major smoker of cannabis in a lot of years because my lungs are damaged. That's why I like concentrates. But the fact that they kept smokable products out of the market mix indicated how serious they were about this being medicine and not a recreational situation. Okay. But understand almost every other state that has medical allows for smokable cannabis and has pre-rolls and things of that nature available in their dispensary. But again, and we also had a very restrictive list of conditions that made it very hard to access medical cannabis, even if you wanted to. We weren't perfect, but we were at a very good place for a beginning of the program.
Right.
And then COVID happened in 2020. And that was a major turning point in our program and for our state. Okay. It did some good thing. Okay. One of the things it did was they enabled emergency regulations that allowed us to get our certifications done by a video conference rather than having to go down to a doctor's office.
Teledoc.
That they also expanded greatly the list of conditions that were acceptable to get certified.
And we were allowed more product also.
And they started allowing more products became available, but more types of products.
I mean, more product for us to buy.
Sure. There were 40 different companies that were now up and running at full capacity, and things were well, except the price points were still well above our neighboring states. But one of the things that happened during COVID, besides the good things, was that without public knowledge, consent, or comment, they changed the regulations that prohibited out-of-state companies from operating inside Pennsylvania, and they allowed MSOs to come in and operate here. Now, I don't know what justification or even if they have a justification for that, but it immediately caused there to be a rush of buyouts and mergers. And within 18 months, what was 40 companies is now 4. I believe that Penn Health Group and Organic Remedies are about the only ones left that are still wholly owned, Pennsylvania owned and operated companies. Everything else you buy in the entire state now, doesn't matter the brand or the name of the dispensary you're going into, you're buying from one of 4 out-of-state based companies. And what happened, and I can prove this by my database because I keep a database of all the concentrates I've been pressing. As of 2020, the yields that I was getting dropped about by a third. Quality was down. The terpene profiles were off. Efficacy of the medicine was off. And the prices were still elevated.
So I got one time, this was right before all this stuff started switching out. I had a mold exposure because remember when we were getting those bad storms and stuff, it was like summertime. And so I'm really, really allergic to mold. So I got exposure because I was trying to help a family member because they got this damaged rain in there. I walked into the house, didn't realize that it was so bad because I thought anyway, it was in the basement. So my whole face swells up like a moon, right? Like I've been taking steroids, when you take prednisone too long, you get a moon face. And then I had to be on an investor call, because I was working on COVID stuff that was what's out there. It was non-Pfizer Moderna. It was something else. And I had to sit all the way back away from my camera so I didn't look, and I was wearing something up to my neck, up to here. So I didn't look so weird. I went to the dispensary, Erik. And at that time, I don't know if you remember this, but we were able to get terpene syringes. Full of terps. I love
great terpene oil. Yeah.
Yes. I won't say who it was. So that way we preserve, the growers and stuff, but they had some stuff happen to them too. People complained about everything, about everybody, but those guys in particular did an amazing job with those terp syringes. Went home. I bought 3 of them and I was like, okay, let me see what happens. I go home and I squirt some in my mouth and literally within 5 minutes, and I'm not making a claim here, this happened. I saw the swelling dissipate from my face. It was oozing down. Yeah. Amazing stuff, right? So I was like, oh, this is really awesome, right? So this I'm a clinical researcher. So now I'm that terpene, the terpenes, we really need to look into these terpenes, right? So I started looking into those and formulating products specifically with high terpene profiles. It's how I developed my candles. So I'm bringing this up because you can't get these terpene syringes anymore.
Not here in Pennsylvania, no, but you can get them in places like Michigan and other states that have fully legal programs. Just that we shouldn't have to suffer the restrictions that we do in light of the fact that all of the other states around us have come to a more pragmatic decision about cannabis. I just don't see this being a moral issue anymore. Used to be that the big excuse was this is a moral thing. What about the children? Well, it helps children too, believe it or not. And when you try to explain this to people who have a block because they're religious, or they've just been a conservative person, they believe all the BS for the last last 80 years
Propaganda.
about cannabis. Yeah. But then I show them a picture like that. Okay. That is a bottle that you could go into any pharmacy in the country up until 1937 and buy that cannabis tincture for a myriad of medical problems, from menstrual cramps to headaches to wasting disease, what they called consumption back in the day, tuberculosis, right? Now, they didn't know the operation of action of cannabis, but they knew what worked. And that was actually a legitimate medicine up until reefer madness. So trying to reverse decades of lies and exaggerations.
And it's still happening.
It
I was
still
downtown.
happens.
I got to tell you this. You're going to die when you hear this. I saved this because, obviously we talked before we got on. I was out Saturday night. I had a meeting with a Cali grower that wants us to help them formulate stuff. Okay, fine. So anyway, I meet downtown, great meeting, very good. And I'm going to go to dinner. So I go to dinner by myself. And so I was going to meet up with one of my friends, but they had a scheduling conflict. So I went by myself. I went to a very nice place I always go to. They know who I am. It's farm to fresh food. I like going to places like that. I was up against the wall in a single table. No problem. I'm not complaining about that. I'm just kind of giving you the aesthetics of it. It's very loud in there, very loud. There's people everywhere. You have to have reservations. You don't get in, that kind of place. Right. So I get a call from one of my colleagues that we're working with, and I'm talking to him on the phone. I was talking about the meeting I had just had, and I'm like, yeah, cannabis, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, the cannabinoids, they're doing this. And, we're talking, and I wasn't like talking about anything that was proprietary. It was, I was just giving him a heads up as to how the meeting went. One of the women there that was, I think, a manager type person comes over to me after, I don't know, I was only on the phone 5 minutes, Erik, and because I was eating too. And they say to me, could you please hang the phone up? This is a non-cell phone restaurant. I'm like, what? So I'm like, this is very odd. So I'm like, okay, I'll call you back. I say to my friend, I'll give you a call back. Okay. And I hang up and I'm like, what's going on? And she was like, oh, the table next to you complained. I'm like, really? The table next to me? Because they were talking to me. And when they left, they said, see you later. Bye-bye. And I was still on the phone. I said, bye, have a great night. I said, no, that's not possible. So then I started thinking about it, right? After she left, because now I have some choice things to say to her, like, who's your boss? Everybody has a boss, like even I have a boss as a CEO. I have a boss. I need to talk to someone in management because I feel like I'm being picked on. Well, after that, she's saying she's the boss, whatever, fine. I'm like, I just need to get my check. I'm out of here. I'm not spending any more money. I'm not getting desserts. I'm not having a drink. I'm done. I started thinking about it, Erik, and I realized it was because I was talking about cannabis.
Okay.
Yep, because that's what we were talking about. We were talking about political stuff. We were talking about Jimmy from around the corner. I'm making that up. We were talking about cannabinoids. And I was talking about like different, terps and things. And that's what I got in trouble for. And here we are in 2024. We have a program in the Commonwealth. We have how many dispensaries in Philadelphia operating right around the corner from where I was.
Right.
Okay. Because I was in Center City.
Yeah.
And this shit is still happening. I was so mad, so angry. Get back in my Uber because I took an Uber to the restaurant because I'm not going to deal with the parking there where it was located. You can imagine where I was. Yeah. And I call my friend back and I'm like, you know what happened, Daniel? It was because we were talking about cannabinoids and we made them uncomfortable. And we're talking about it from a health standpoint, right? We're talking about helping people. That's what we were talking about. And that
woman even care. You know what I mean? Why would that even offend somebody? You're not trying to sell somebody something. No. You're talking about research, technical aspects of research. That shouldn't have raised any ire from anybody, I would imagine. That's a bit weird.
I refrained from, because, normally I would have gotten on my Instagram. I would have put a post up about it, like discrimination, unacceptable. I didn't. I just had to calm myself down because I was so angry. I mean, this is ridiculous. Here we are, and we're still talking about this stuff. We're handcuffed in our own program now, and it's not for us not voting. It's not for us not trying to advocate. A lot of the advocates that got into the space early on are two-faced almost. Like
yes.
one way this way, one way that way. It depends which way you get them on that day.
Yeah. I agree 100%. I felt like I've been Don Quixote tilting at windmills for the last 8 years, trying to get us home grow, trying to get us public consumption laws that allow for cannabis consumption lounges and DUI protections, just basic stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's not like we're asking for, a whole bunch of things. We want basic rights. We want to be able to grow this plant in our homes, not for resale.
For your own consumption. Yes.
There's no reason why we should be. You can brew beer at home. You can make wine at home.
In the cellar.
You can even distill liquor now in small quantities inside your house for your own consumption. Cannabis is should be treated no different. It is a plant. It is a non-toxic plant. Let's make that very clear. Yes, you can grow opium poppies in your garden legally, but you try to get any of the sap from those, you're committing a felony. Okay. And the sap from those flowers will kill you if you eat enough of it. You can eat 20 pounds of weed and not die from that. It has an LD50 that's so high, it's just almost non-existent. They're telling us we can't grow this harmless in terms of death. I find it unconscionable. It
really is. And we're coming up on our time. My team keeps me tight on time.
Always love spending time with you. Thanks so much for having me on.
Thank you so much. And we're going to have to do, because this is just the tip of the iceberg. I just wanted to kind of talk about, let's just start having some more discussions about this. Now that my podcast is humanitarian, this is a humanitarian issue. We need to talk about this in a safe place. Luckily, my podcast can't get blocked out. So we can talk about this stuff. So thank you so much for being on with me today.
No problem at all. I'll come on anytime you like. You have yourself a fantastic week coming up, okay?
You too, my friend. Thank you again. And thank you to all of our listeners, viewers, and supporters out there that tune in to Humanitarian Horizons, Christina and Erik Unveiled. See you later for now.